You enter a space that never closes. There are no walls, but it still feels crowded. Light comes from everywhere at once. Small rectangles glow in countless hands. Everyone is looking down, but somehow everyone is together. The room refreshes constantly. Nothing stays long enough to settle. Images slide past, voices overlap, stories begin and disappear before they finish. The movement never stops, and no one asks it to. People stand close without touching. Each person is alone, but the rhythm is shared. Scroll, pause, like, scroll again. Fingers move almost in sync, not planned, learned. There is no center here, no stage, no leader visible. Attention shifts fluidly from one moment to the next. Something rises, something fades. The room decides quickly, without explanation. Silence doesn't exist in this space. Even when nothing is said, something is shown. Faces, bodies, opinions. Certainty delivered in fragments. Everything feels immediate, personal, urgent. Belonging is measured quietly. Numbers appear, counts rise, approval becomes visible. You don't need to ask if something matters. The room shows you. If many people are watching, it must be important. If many people agree, it must be true. No one explains the rules, but everyone knows them. What to share, what to avoid, what tone feels right, what feels risky. The room rewards alignment gently, with attention, with reach, with inclusion. The pace shapes behavior. There is no time to sit with doubt. If something feels uncomfortable, you move on. If something feels good, you stay a little longer. Comfort becomes a guide. The room feels friendly, familiar, always available. You can leave, but it follows you, in pockets, on wrists, on bedside tables. The crowd is never far away. Nothing here asks for belief directly. No one says, trust this. Trust happens quietly, through repetition, through exposure, through the feeling that everyone else is already here. The room does not argue, it presents. It shows you what people like you seem to like, what people like you seem to believe. Over time, that feels reassuring. Before anything is questioned, the follow has already happened. Attention has already been given. Agreement has already formed. This room doesn't demand faith. It makes faith feel unnecessary. Everything appears obvious when enough people move the same way, together. This is where Carl Jung would stop watching the feed and start watching what it replaces. Not the content, but the feeling underneath it. The quiet urge that pulls people back again and again. The feed offers constant presence. It fills small gaps, waiting rooms, elevators, even silence at home. Jung would notice how quickly discomfort disappears once the screen lights up. Boredom, loneliness, uncertainty don't vanish. They are covered, gently, repeatedly. The shadow here is not hidden desire. It is unprocessed absence. The moments when nothing is happening. The questions that arrive when attention has nowhere to go. The feed steps in before those moments can settle. Jung believed the shadow grows when parts of life are avoided rather than integrated. In this room, what is avoided is stillness. The feed moves just fast enough to prevent reflection, but slow enough to feel familiar. You are never forced to think. You are invited to continue. The crowd matters. Seeing others react reassures you that your response is normal. Likes, shares, comments quietly tell you what to feel. Confusion fades when reaction is already provided. Jung would see how the shadow becomes collective. Everyone avoids the same discomfort together. The feed also mirrors desire back to itself. You see versions of life that feel better arranged, happier, clearer, more confident. That comparison stirs something uneasy. Instead of facing it, you scroll. The feeling dissolves into motion. Nothing here feels harmful. That's why it works. The feed does not demand attention. It offers relief. Jung knew that the shadow often hides behind what feels helpful. The more it helps, the less likely it is to be questioned. Over time, the habit deepens. The mind reaches for the feed before it reaches inward. Reflection feels heavier than scrolling. Silence feels incomplete without something to fill it. Jung would not argue that the feed creates the shadow. He would say it gives the shadow a place to wait, a place where unresolved feelings can rest without being examined, temporarily. But the shadow does not disappear. It accumulates quietly between posts, between updates, between moments of distraction. And when the feed finally stops, even briefly, the shadow returns with more weight than before. The room feels full, but something remains untouched. Jung would recognize that tension, not as failure, but as a signal, a reminder that what is avoided does not dissolve. It waits patiently beneath the glow while everyone keeps scrolling together. This is where Friedrich Nietzsche would start listening for virtue inside the feed. Not virtue as kindness, but virtue as approval. The feed does not tell you what is good. It shows you what is accepted. Here, morality is visible. It has numbers, counts, reactions. You don't need to argue about what matters. The room has already decided. What rises is good, what sinks is forgotten. Goodness moves with attention. Nietzsche would notice how quickly people learn the tone, what sounds right, what feels safe to say, what earns approval without friction. You don't need rules. The feed trains you gently. You adjust before anyone corrects you. Right and wrong become aesthetic, not ethical. Certain opinions look better. Certain emotions photograph well. Anger is allowed if it performs. Sadness is allowed if it resolves. Complexity is trimmed down until it fits the space. The feed rewards clarity, not truth. Certainty travels faster than doubt. Strong statements move better than careful ones. Nietzsche would recognize this as morality built on ease. What flows is good. What interrupts is suspect. No one forces agreement. That's important. You choose what to like, what to share. But those choices happen inside a visible system of reward. Over time, choosing differently starts to feel uncomfortable, not immoral, just awkward. The feed makes goodness social. You don't feel right alone. You feel right when others respond. Morality becomes something you sense through reaction, through alignment, through being in step with the crowd. Nietzsche warned about moral systems that flatten difference, not by punishment, but by preference. The feed doesn't attack what it dislikes, it ignores it. Silence becomes judgment, invisibility becomes correction. People learn quickly what not to say, what not to post, what not to question. Not because it's forbidden, but because it doesn't land, it doesn't move, it doesn't belong. Morality here is enforced through relevance. What feels good is being seen, what feels bad is being passed over. Nietzsche would see how this reshapes values, how being right becomes less important than being visible, how belonging becomes a measure of goodness. Nothing here feels cruel. That's why it works. The feed smiles, it encourages, it rewards. And slowly it teaches what a good voice sounds like, what a good opinion looks like, and how morality adjusts itself to whatever keeps the room moving together. This is where Niccolò Machiavelli would stop asking what people believe and start watching what shapes their attention. Power in this room does not speak, it sorts. There is no command telling anyone what to see, no order to follow. The feed decides quietly. Some things appear again and again, others vanish without explanation. What stays visible gains weight, what disappears loses relevance. Power here works through presence, not force. Machiavelli would notice how control becomes invisible when choice feels endless. You can scroll anywhere, you can stop at anything, but the room nudges gently. Certain posts rise, certain voices repeat, certain ideas feel unavoidable. Over time, that repetition becomes authority. The feed does not need agreement, it only needs attention. Once attention is captured, influence follows naturally. What people see often enough begins to feel normal. What feels normal becomes acceptable. What is acceptable becomes powerful. There is no ruler here, no throne. Power is distributed across patterns. Algorithms are not announced, but outcomes are consistent. Some voices grow, others shrink. The system rewards what keeps people present, not what keeps them informed. Machiavelli would watch who benefits. Platforms gain time, advertisers gain certainty, influencers gain reach, users gain belonging. Everyone receives something, which makes the system feel fair. That balance keeps resistance low. What makes this power durable is how personal it feels. The feed looks like it knows you. It mirrors your interests, your fears, your values. That intimacy creates trust. When guidance feels tailored, it feels deserved. Dissent here is not punished, it is buried. A post can exist and still disappear. Silence becomes the strongest tool. You are free to speak, but not guaranteed to be heard. Machiavelli understood how effective that is. Power that ignores does not provoke rebellion. The crowd enforces the system without realizing it. Likes guide visibility, shares amplify reach. Participation fuels the structure that organizes participation. Power does not sit above the crowd, it moves through it. Nothing about this feels oppressive. That's essential. Power survives by feeling useful, by helping people connect, by making the room feel alive. When power provides comfort, people defend it. Machiavelli would recognize this as modern influence perfected. No commands, no violence, no ideology required. Just a system that decides what appears, how often, and to whom. The feed does not tell people what to believe. It decides what they see long enough to believe it on their own. This is where Napoleon Hill would notice how belief becomes effortless. No speeches, no promises spoken aloud, just repetition that feels personal. Hill believed belief grows when people see evidence of movement. Here, movement is constant. The feed never stops. Something is always happening. Something is always being liked, shared, followed. That activity matters. It creates the feeling that progress is underway even when nothing specific is achieved. Motion becomes proof. Hill would recognize how belief here is built through participation. You don't just watch, you react, you follow, you post. Each small action deepens investment. Once you participate, belief wants to justify itself. If you are here, it must matter. The feed offers tiny rewards, a notification, a reaction, a rise in numbers. These moments feel insignificant on their own, but together they create momentum. Hill understood that belief strengthens when effort and reward repeat in quick cycles. What makes this powerful is how belief feels self-directed. You chose what to follow, you chose what to like, you chose what to trust. The system does not argue with you, it agrees. It reflects your choices back, polished and affirmed. Belief here is not about truth, it is about reassurance. Seeing others respond confirms that you are not alone, that your attention is valid, that your interests are shared. Hill would see how belief stabilizes when it feels collective. Failure is softened. If something doesn't land, it disappears. No confrontation, no correction. The solution is simple. Post again, scroll again, engage again. Belief is never disproven, it is refreshed. The feed also stretches belief forward. Something better might be next, something clearer, something more aligned. You keep watching not because you are convinced, but because hope feels reasonable when everyone else is still here too. Hill would recognize the genius of that structure. Belief does not require a final promise, it only needs continuity. As long as the feed continues, belief has somewhere to live. Nothing here feels deceptive. The connections are real, the reactions are real, the sense of belonging is real. That reality protects belief from scrutiny. When something feels good often enough, questioning feels unnecessary. When the screen goes dark, belief lingers, not as a thought, but as a habit. The instinct to check, to return, to trust that something meaningful is happening just beyond the next scroll. Ill would see this as belief perfected for scale, not taught, not declared, simply practiced together in a room that never empties.